Our
that,
worldly experience is
Yeah.
dualistic.
okay,
Our life is called the event of choice, and that choice is between good and evil. It's inescapable.
yeah.
The existence of evil is inescapable in a physical reality.
Test the claim.
Okay. Yeah, so Mithraism would have been considered a severe national security threat, in the sense that were it permitted to continue to be, like, Mithraism reached such prominence that it became the religion of choice for the Roman elite military class. So when we look at the remains of numerous Mithraea, Mithraea is the name of the plural for the temples of Mithras, at Hadrian's Wall, which
In Scotland, England border.
yeah, which during its time marked the border between the north and south. Mithraea, the Mithraeum is found. Even there's an example of a Mithraeum underneath a church. So the common soldier would often. Christianity was popular amongst the common soldiers, and the mystery cult of Mithras was popular amongst the officer class.
We're talking about like in Constantine's era.
In
before?
Hadrian's.
Hadrian. Okay,
Hadrian's
so like
time.
150 around that.
Around that,
Something,
yeah.
okay.
So the officers would go underground to perform their worship or rites of initiation, and the common soldiers would go and pray to Jesus. Actually, I don't know if these temples are from the time of Hadrian. I just know that they are located at Hadrian's Wall.
Okay.
There's also probably the most famous one in Britain is the London Mithraeum at London Wall,
Okay.
which you can go and see.
Yeah. I didn't know about that.
There are many remains of Mithraic, or a number of remains of Mithraic practice, even in modern culture now. So, for example, the handshake is part of one of the rites of ascension in Mithraism, the common military salute. So, Mithras is a.
I thought the common military salute derives from like the Ottomans, doesn't it? In terms of, or is that the
Well,
march?
I'll give you the Mithraic version. So Mithras is associated with the sun. He's
like Apollo.
Yeah. So he's syncretized with Apollo and Helios.
Okay.
In the name of Sol Invictus.
Yeah.
The indomitable sun, or. However, Mithras is not the sun itself. Mithras precedes the sun. In the imagery that we're given is that he precedes the sun in his golden chariot. And one of the rites of initiation is called the rite of the solar charioteer. And Mithras is said to travel across the sky, and his golden chariot radiates like a kind of has a radiant light, emits a radiant light.
Like the Ark of the Covenant, something like that, or?
I don't know much about the Ark of the Covenant, but
Yeah.
maybe so. So, someone performing the rite of the solar charioteer shields his eyes from the solar radiance emitted from his chariot. With the emergence of Christianity and the establishment of the Catholic Church, an already sort of somewhat hidden subterranean religion was driven even more underground, and it's thought that many of the Mithraic teachings or practices entered secret societies. One of the rites of Mithraism is the rite of the nymphus, also known as the rite of the bridegroom. And the ritual would entail a male adherent dressed as a bride. One of the telltale symbols of Mithras is the solar diadem. So it's like a crescent crown.
Isn't that for Sol Invictus as well? I've seen
Yeah.
Sol Invictus depicted with the... Okay.
Radiating rays of the sun out of the crown.
Okay. And then everyone's shielding.
Well, Mithras is also associated with, is considered the light bringer. So not the sun itself, but the morning star.
Okay.
And
That one there. Is that the Morning Star?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
And on the carvings that depict the most common depiction of Mithras is the tauroctony scene. The tauroctony scene being the slaying of the bull.
Yeah.
So you often see Mithras mounting the bull, looking away, plunging his dagger into the back of the bull. And he's flanked by two torch-bearing cherubs.
Yeah.
So picture Mithras is also somewhat androgynous. So even in the Iranian world, Mithras has two names. Mithra, which is commonly a woman's name, and Mehr, M-E-H-R, which can be a prefix for either a man or a woman's name.
Okay.
So it's hard to say whether Mithras is a male or a female. And he's sometimes depicted as a somewhat effeminate-looking male. So picture an effeminate figure in a gown with a diadem with rays of the sun emanating from it, holding a torch.
Like Statue of Liberty.
Like the Statue of Liberty. Designed by Bartholdi, I believe.
A French person, right? As a gift to the Americans.
But also a self-confessed Freemason.
Wow. Okay, wow.
So what if I was to say
into-
to you that Mithras, that the Statue of Liberty is actually Mithras?
Which is a secret society.
Freemasonry is
Yeah. And you're saying Mithraism back then was a secret society.
And it was driven even further underground by the coming to prominence of Christianity.
Wow. Very interesting.
And actually, if you see some of the depictions of Mithras,
Another depiction I've seen of Mithras is him carrying the bull on his back. Is that the bull he's carrying on his back, or is it that a sheep? Because I've seen a depiction of, like in the early few centuries, there's a depiction of Jesus, according to Christians, carrying a sheep on his back, as a good shepherd.
Yeah.
And to me, it looks like there's these two figures that are competing, just like you said, right? Like there's Mithra and there's Jesus competing for who's going to win as the Roman religion.
Right.
And you have Jesus copying Mithra in a way, carrying the sheep, and Mithra's carrying a bull.
If I'm not mistaken, I think that imagery also appears in one of representing one of the Egyptian divinities as well.
Maybe, yeah. I don't think it's limited to them.
No.
Yeah. Maybe Apollo himself, because they're all both meant to be seen in that way, right?
Let me give you some insight into the establishment of, or the events surrounding the Christianization of Constantine. So the kind of famous story is that he saw a vision. Some say it was a vision of a cross. But
some say it's a meteor, right? Or something.
My understanding it was that he, at what was called the Battle of the Milvian Bridge on the outskirts of Rome, and there is a victory arch depicting the battle scene. I think it's outside of the Colosseum. And it depicts the battle scene. So the story goes that Constantine witnessed a vision of the Cairo, the
P with
the Christian symbol.
Yeah.
And then at some point during this narrative, he had a dream in which he was visited by Jesus, who explained the vision, and following which Constantine took up the symbol or took up the cross in the name of Jesus. And this story is recorded by Eusebius,
Yeah.
who I guess was the biographer of Constantine during that time. In fact, I believe they knew each other personally. On the Arch of Constantine, which depicts the battle, there are a number of religious symbols and figures depicted.
Okay.
The Cairo doesn't appear. The cross doesn't appear.
Wow.
Jesus doesn't appear. But Apollo appears.
And by Apollo appearing, does that mean through his sacred animal, the dolphin and the anchor?
Apollo.
Just the actual
Apollo's
Apollo figure?
likeness.
Wow. Because I think they found, I think they found in offshore, like Palestine, they found a ring recently, like a signet ring maybe or something like that, and it had Apollo on it, like a figure like Apollo, and it was talking about the Good Shepherd. So it was a depiction of Jesus as if he's Apollo, because back then they've kind of fused.
Yeah.
So maybe could it have been a depiction of Jesus? But I think in the early few centuries, every time they depicted Jesus, it was as a clean-shaven person in a very Apollo-like manner.
Right. I've heard scholars describing what appears on the arch, and they've always described it as Apollo.
Okay.
Apollo, Mithras, and I think there's one female divinity. I don't want to misspeak, so I won't say the name, but it's a female divinity. The arch is also flanked by 4 Mithraic magi. What rubbed further salt in the wound was that the early drafts that were discovered of the report by Eusebius didn't include any mention of the vision of the Cairo or the visitation in a dream by Jesus.
So like the standard narrative we're told is he had that vision, he ascribes like what is that cross called? The
Cairo.
Cairo.
Yeah.
So he ascribed the Cairo to each of the Roman soldiers' shields, right? So they all had the Cairo on their shield, and they're going into battle with the Cairo, like it's very Christian.
Yeah.
And you're saying there's nothing
it didn't
Christian.
happen. It was added after the fact.
Okay.
So I think it's the first 1 or 2 drafts by Eusebius don't include any of that narrative.
Yeah.
I won't go so far as to say
It's to cover up or something.
Jesus was chosen necessarily to replace Mithras. I think the Jesus movement was gaining momentum anyway. And maybe Mithras didn't have enough of an interesting backstory. Perhaps he didn't have this very relatable earthbound story. He was a foreign god, although I suppose Jesus was considered a local.
You could say he was a foreign god, but he's in the empire, right? Like he's a foreign god of a people who are in the empire, and that's much better than having a foreign god from an external person from the empire.
Yeah, I don't want to characterize the presence of Mithras in the Roman world purely down to the dissemination of Iranian religious ideas by the Cilician pirates. There was also a substantial influx of like unskilled labor from east to west, probably in both directions, but obviously that moving from east to west is what also brought Mithraic beliefs into the Roman world.
Okay.
Anyway, ultimately...
And would you say, I mean, this is probably getting very controversial, but, you know, with, like, joining Freemasonry now, you have to ascribe to a god.
I didn't know
to
that.
join that. You can't join Freemasonry as an atheist.
Okay.
So, yeah, no, it's is there an element in Mithraism where there's, like, universality allowed, as there is in, like, Catholicism? And
very little is known about the specific
details.
Teachings of Mithraism, predominantly by virtue of the fact that it was a mystery cult. It wasn't something that was spoken about publicly, although there are some, and they're quite turgid liturgies. It's Yeah, we don't know a
sure,
huge
sure.
amount. We don't know a huge amount about what they believed.
Yeah.
In his Indo-Iranian guise, or specifically in his Iranian iteration, Mithras or Mithra is a divinity that oversees agreements, covenants, oaths, and contracts,
Okay.
which is another part of why he's associated with the handshake.
Okay.
So
And
the handshake is actually invoking Mithras in creating that contractual bond
and is it similar to the one that is used
today,
today?
like everywhere.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So Mithras predates Zoroastrianism. Mithra predates Zoroastrianism. Zarathustra never mentioned Mithra as far as we're aware, but Mithra was integrated into Zoroastrianism to fill the role of the intercessor.
Okay.
So Zarathustra talks about the Saoshyants.
Yeah.
The Saoshyants are later interpreted to be like savior figures, like messianic, eschatological savior figures. However, my reading of that topic is not the same as institutional Zoroastrian orthodoxy.
Yeah.
I read that as there will be people from amongst mankind who will be morally outstanding, and they are the ones who will bring benefit to mankind and to the earth.
Okay.
However, in kind of later Zoroastrianism, this became more of an eschatological savior figure.
Okay. Yeah.
And I believe Mithra was integrated into Zoroastrianism to fulfill that role.
Interesting.
But as I say, Zarathustra never mentions him. And I think part of that was to appease the sensibilities of the society.
So, am I correct in saying you're like a follower of Zarathustra?
I'm just a student
Just
of
a
Zarathustra's
student of
teachings.
Teachings. So you don't, the way you interpret it,
Yeah.
you don't hold too much weight on the figure Mithra
Well, he doesn't mention Mithra.
because he doesn't mention Mithra.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Okay.
I'm saying
Interesting.
a clergy who's still amenable to pre-Zoroastrian ideas,
Yeah.
sort of grandfathered Mithra back in,
Okay.
and quite a number of pre-Zoroastrian ideas, like the prominence of fire, as in a physical fire, predates Zoroastrianism. Despite the fact the word for fire being of significance
Yeah.
in Zoroastrianism, this was used as an entry point to reintegrate almost what appears from the outside to be an almost like worship-like reverence for the physical fire.
Like fire worshippers that they
Into-
later became known to be. Well, I mean, like they're not like.
I mean, fire worship is a pre-Zoroastrian.
But then, how did
practice.
it get associated with Ahura Mazda? Because I thought fire worship was linked to Ahura Mazda, and then Ahriman is the opposite god, right? Like,
No,
no, am I?
No. I'll explain it.
Okay.
The reason why fire has any
Yeah.
significance in Zoroastrianism is because the preoccupation of a Zoroastrian is to bring about a state of cosmic order.
Yeah.
In another way of putting it, they are preoccupied with bringing about the victory of truth over deceit. And by truth, I mean the ultimate truth is to bring about order in the universe that is in line with the purpose for which the universe was created. Is to make the universe, to bring about a reality or a state of reality for which reality was intended.
And am I right in understanding that Ahura Mazda created the universe, and very early in its creation, Ahriman became a figure?
I'll get to that.
It's part of that.
I'll get to that. Asha is the word for this cosmic order.
Okay.
Asha or Arta, they both mean the same thing. Arta, these teachings come to us in the Indo-European language. Arta literally is order.
Okay.
The best order, or the the order to which we are aspiring is Arta Bahishta or Asha Bahishta. Arta, order, Bahishta is means best. In modern Persian, it's Ordi Behesht, or best order.
Okay.
Okay, this issue of evil. Ahura Mazda has a number of emanations. He emanates archetypes. One of these archetypes is called Spenta Menu.
Okay.
Spenta means creative, bounteous, progressive, holy. Menu means mentality. Angra Menu, from which we get Ahriman. Ahriman's a contraction of Angra Menu. Angra, and you hear it, you hear the word anger or angry. Etymologically, it actually means to constrain or to constrict or to knot up. And again, menu means mentality. So Angra Menu is the antithesis of Spenta Menu. These are the two primordial spirits. But by spirit, I don't mean like a ghostly figure.
Yeah.
I mean like how someone would describe the spirit of sportsmanship.
Yeah.
So you either have the progressive mentality or progressive spirit, or you have the constrained or constricted mentality or constrained or constricted spirit.
So it's not fair to say Ahriman, like Ahrimenya. It's not fair to call him evil, according to the way you're describing it.
It's not a him.
Like the figure.
It's a mentality.
It's a mentality. Okay.
It became anthropomorphized. It was given a persona. But I'm saying in the essence of Zarathustra's teachings, it's not a person, it's a state of mind one manifests.
And would you say Ahura Mazda is also a figure, or is he actually an entity?
Zarathustra describes him as a friend.
So he's an entity compared to Ahriman.
Zarathustra gives Ahura Mazda certain a somewhat humanizing description. However, I still tend to believe he's doing that to inspire humanity in terms of how they must approach the principle of wisdom. So Ahura Mazda literally translates as Lord Wisdom. Okay. But by entitling it Lord, you're simply speaking to a level of reverence for the concept of wisdom. So it's the titanic wisdom. It is the overarching intellect responsible for the generation of our reality.
That's very interesting. Would you say this is like your reading of Zoroastrianism? Because I've had different versions. Like I've had that there is this version where there's a lot more emphasis on duality, and you're probably talking about like these priests and stuff that came later and incorporated fire worshipping.
That Zarathustra literally told us to beware.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, those guys.
He says beware the mumbling priests.
Wow. So they kind of turn into a dualistic religion in a way, right? And then there's also an element of Zoroastrianism.
Our worldly experience is dualistic.
Okay.
Our life is called the event of choice, and that choice is between good and evil. It's inescapable.
Yeah.
The existence of evil is inescapable in a physical reality.
But I'm talking about in terms of deifying it into a
No,
dualistic.
there's no deity. There's no evil deity.
Isn't there like a...
That's a heresy.
But the priests were committing that heresy.
First of all, that's not universal amongst the priesthood.
You know, I'm not saying it was.
I don't know of any Zoroastrian priest who would say there is an evil god.
Okay.
Ahura Mazda is the creator, and he is the head of. He is the pinnacle of the theology. There is no.
Okay, because I was going to say, I thought, like from my understanding before this conversation, it was like there was this dualistic kind of thing going on, and then there was a monotheistic kind of thing going on where they were saying that Ahura Mazda is the god.
Yeah.
And very early in creation, there was the figure Ahriman created, but now you're saying a different version.
I don't even consider Ahriman created.
Okay. But how many Zoroastrians would you say do consider him a created being, or?
Sorry,
like
how many? The creator?
No. How many Zoroastrians consider Ahriman as a figure? Would you say percentage-wise?
I talk about these teachings from a philosophical point of view.
Okay. Okay.
So I try to extract the philosophical meaning. However, a religious narrative may have developed from these teachings.
Okay.
And I'm sure there is more than one way to interpret them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm not going to imbue Angra Mainyu with attributes that Zarathustra didn't give him.
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
it.
It's very interesting. Like, it's very interesting what you're saying. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
But it sounds also to me slightly influenced by Buddhism in a way as well. Would you say?
It's older than Buddhism
Okay.
by 1,000 years.
I meant like the way you're approaching Zarathustra's teachings.
I would say, but
They're
it's interesting that
very-
you say Buddhism, because I would argue that Buddhism, although the lexicon of Buddhism
Yeah.
seems more akin to Hinduism in terms of Dharma and so on, I actually think upon like a spiritual excavation of Buddhism is actually born out of a critique of Zoroastrianism. But we can go into that.
And could this have been happening during the Parthian times? Was it?
No, Achaemenid.
It came in. Okay.
The Gautama Buddha is said to have lived in the 6th century BCE.
Yeah. Yeah. Was
Okay.
it that early? Or?
Eh?
Oh.
So that's like 2,600 years ago.
Oh yeah. Sorry,
25
I misread.
2,500
Yeah,
years ago.
2,500, something like that, right? Yeah.
There's a book called The Buddha from Babylon, which I know we're going on a bit of a tangent
Yeah.
here, but an author and a Buddhist of some 30 years or so, an American guy, proposes from a number of different on a multidisciplinary basis, proposes that before I make the claim, are you familiar with how Darius the Great came to power?
Yeah,
throw it out
I
there.
think I actually read about it really recently, but it's
Okay.
just, so he was was he kind of came to power in the same way, like what empire was he under again? So like the Achaemenids. Okay.
Yeah.
So was it very similar to the way like Sargon of Akkad came to power? He came in through like the river, he invaded this like area and established the Achaemenid dynasty?
No.
No, he was part of the Achaemenids.
The establishment of the dynasty was by Syrus.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So Syrus,
Was Darius like really ruthless in the way he established the dynasty?
so Cyrus was succeeded by his son.
Not established, but yeah. Sorry.
Cyrus was succeeded by his son Cambyses.
Okay.
Then there's lots of intrigue and mystery,
Yeah.
but ultimately he was succeeded by Darius.
Okay.
However, in between Cambyses and Darius, the throne in Babylon was, as Darius described it, usurped.
Okay.
One part of the narrative suggests that the usurper was what do you call, like someone who imitates, I forgot the word. Anyway, someone was claiming to be the brother of Cambyses, whose name was Bardia. So Cyrus had two sons, Cambyses and Bardia. Bardia became the governor of the east, or he was charged with overseeing the expansion of the empire to the east. Cambyses fulfilled his father's ambition of conquering Egypt and became the pharaoh of Egypt. And the Achaemenids became like the 26th or 27th dynasty of Egypt.
Okay.
Bardia is thought to have died under mysterious circumstances in the east. We're then told of a high priest of the temple in Babylon ascending to the throne. And he ruled for a period of something like 3 to 9 months, during which people reported a certain degree of satisfaction and prosperity, particularly due to his tax reliefs and other economic policies. The story goes that Darius, who was related to Syrus and had served as, I believe, his spear bearer, but was not necessarily next in line to the throne, constructed a group to enact a coup. And in his most famous inscriptions, called the
Is that the one where it's in 3 languages, and then that was used as a way to discover those 2 lost languages?
it may have been in. It would have probably have been in Akkadian, Old Persian.
I can get it. I think I got the book with me.
No problem.
Sorry, carry on.
So the inscription, and there's a visual, like there is a visual depiction as well.
Yeah.
Darius describes the head. Oh, so he describes the imposter king.
Yeah.
And names him as Gaumata.
Yeah.
Gaumata. So this guy, Harvey Kraft, who wrote the book Buddha from Babylon, proposes that Gaumata is in fact Gautama.
Wow, okay.
And that the letters were just switched around as a process of transliteration. And that Gaumata, we know, was a high priest, probably of the Ezagila temple in Babylon.
So a royal person.
Not only was he a high priest, but the clay seals of his family, like coat of arms, were found, with carrying a name very similar to Siddhartha. Siddhartha, Artha being the cosmic order, the cosmic fire.
And in Sanskrit, would this have any meaning? Like if the Siddhartha, I can't.
First of all, the Avestan language and Sanskrit are almost mutually intelligible.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me if there was some crossover.
I mean, there probably is now, but I mean, like back then, if there was,
it's highly possible that would also have had some significance in the Sanskrit speaking world, or in languages descending from Sanskrit. The Buddha is described as Sakyamuni.
Okay.
Harvey Kraft doesn't see Sakya, he sees Saka. Sakamuni means the sage of the Saka people. The Saka, so there's a province in southeastern Iran called Sistan and Balochistan.
Yeah, Balochistan.
Sistan is a contraction of Saka Stana. So he proposes that this individual was a member of a noble family of the Saka people, which is a member of the Iranian ethno-linguistic group, who were known in Persepolis, and he is of noble lineage and found himself as the high priest of the temple in Babylon, and took the throne while the king was absent in the west, having conquered Egypt, who also, on his way back from Egypt, died under mysterious circumstances, and his brother in the east had already died under mysterious circumstances. Some people say Darius invented the whole story, killed everybody, blamed it on mysterious circumstances, and
that's where the religion came from, those stories of him blaming everyone.
Which religion?
Oh no, sorry, Buddhism I was talking about.
Oh, no. So this inscription depicts Darius sitting on his throne with the usurper and his conspirators. The usurper Gaumata is at the back, and Darius claims to have foiled their plot and have executed them.
Okay.
So Harvey Kraft theorizes that Gaumata escaped, fled to the east, back to arguably what were his homelands, the lands of the Saka people, entered an ascetic lifestyle in the forest, and emerged as the Buddha. So having been this wise man, this high priest of noble lineage,
it matches the story, right?
It matches it time-wise.
Yeah.
The names are almost exactly the same. There's a Siddhartha, connection, Sakamuni. There are lots, but he also undertakes what he calls a spiritual archaeology. He digs into the teachings of the Buddha to extract any possibility or any signs of what milieu these teachings were created.
Where you're kind of dragging this figure of the Buddha to like more towards Balochistan and this area, isn't it? In like that area, they have a lot of culture of this like chadar, where they kind of there's a lot of emphasis in that region of isolation from the outside world.
When you're on the individual level,
like on the individual asceticism, yeah. So in this area, they have this like culture of like asceticism.
That may be the case.
And in Afghanistan now, you had those massive Buddha statues.
Yeah.
And all of that. There was a massive heavy.
Yeah. Oh, Afghanistan was a Buddhist country.
Yeah, it was a Buddhist country, right? Yeah. So,
and also there are locations named in the origin story of the Buddha.
Yeah.
Gandhara, Kapil. These are again very reminiscent of.
So, Alexander, but isn't Kandahar named after Alexander? It's like a derivative of Iskandar.
I've heard that it's a derivative of Iskandar. Yeah. And Alexander is later than the Buddha.
Yeah. So
if Kandahar is named after Alexander, then it weakens the claim that these places that are being referenced in the Buddha origin story are in Afghanistan. But that being said, how you doing? The common or the conventional Buddha origin story is that he was born in Lumbini in northern India or Nepal. There are no artifacts that support. I wouldn't argue against him having spent time there, but there's nothing to support the claim that he was born there. In fact, there's one person who presented archaeological evidence for the birth of the Buddha in that place, and those were proven to be forgery.
It just seems like a very convenient place to locate the Buddha between the two heartlands of Buddhism, like India and China.
Yeah, I think it's Ashoka who made the claim, but even I think he's separated from the Buddha by like 100 or 200 years or something.
Yeah, he was a while after, right?
But this book by Harvey Kraft, the
Ashoka
Buddha,
is kind of like Constantine, right, to Buddhism in a way. It's a
in a way.
Are you gonna finish? Or are you gonna go home? Or are you gonna...
I will go home eventually.
But are you gonna come with us first after this?
Oh, there you go. It's been a
probably
really
gonna
long
wrap up now,
conversation, yeah. But no, thanks so much for this. This is very useful information, and like, I really like this part of the world and like researching it. So I'm trying to improve my knowledge on it. And thanks for like the information on the Parthians
No problem,
and stuff.
I appreciate you.
Or maybe next time, like if we could have a discussion about like Chaldeans and like Sargon of Akkad a bit earlier, because that's a period of history I'm really interested in as well.
I've come across some new research on. Spoke to Sam about it recently, actually.
Okay.
The origins of Proto-Indo-European.
This is something I'm really interested in. So Yamnaha and all of that going on.
Yeah. So, like we won't go into it now, I suppose, but the most popular theories were either that Proto-Indo-European originated in the sort of upper arc of the Fertile Crescent around 8,000 years ago, or in the Pontic-Caspian steppe lands between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea 7,000 years ago.
Yeah.
New research shines a different light on it, so that might be something interesting.
You know, there's been a lot of supposed new research from like Hindutva, and then like opposing this whole like out of India theory, and all that. It's all, that's interesting. It'll be good to touch on that maybe as well.
Yeah.
And just on the final thing on the Yamnaha.
Yeah.
Were they as brutal as it said? Like, did they just go and like destroy Europe in a way?
I would say that.
And did they have a different approach when the Indo-Europeans, when they went south towards India? Because of the vast population of that region, they employed a different strategy? Or
So by the time they got... So Yamnaya, we see Yamnaya to the north of the Caucasus.
Yeah.
In a huge steppe land to the north of the Caucasus. And then they would have branched off into the Europeans the speakers of Proto-Indo-European would have travelled up, or from the Pontic Caspian steppeland would have branched off into the Europeans who went west and the Indo-Iranians who went east. And I guess somewhere at some point before that we have Yamnaya culture and so on. They've been brutal. I don't know how.
Yeah, I've just heard things about like when you look at the genetics after the Yamnaya invasion of Europe, it just seems like they're just slaughtered on a level that's never been seen before in history. I'm not sure on the accuracy of that, but when you look at like the Indo-European languages, they're almost extinct, right? You just have like Finnish and Hungarian and all of this. It just seems very regional. And
90% of the speakers of European languages now speak Indo-European languages.
So it seems like they had a massive...
We can't necessarily argue that those languages were just better and replaced the ones that were there already. We have to consider the fact that this was imposed on those lands, probably by some warlike mechanisms.
Yeah.
I know that the type of society... I apologize for bringing it back to this.
No, it's fine.
Zarathustra's philosophical treatise is a critique of the society in which he lived. So if we regard the Indo-Iranian society as a branch of Indo-European society and therefore related very closely to Yamnaya culture, he was trying to revolutionize society to change its direction away from whatever type of lifestyle they were already living.
Okay.
You had only what you could defend.
Yeah.
You took whatever the people you encountered couldn't protect. That seems to have been, in very general terms, the way people lived. It was a somewhat nomadic lifestyle or mobile lifestyle.
They're really good horsemen, probably, right? Because from that region.
And yeah, it probably, certainly by today's standards, it would have been brutal. I would argue that probably the most brutal era that the world has ever seen was like during the Turco-Mongol invasion of Persia.
And
like
the Abbasids.
Timor specifically.
I'm actually surprised, like, a lot of Muslims name their kid. I mean, I was actually, like, inshallah, when I have kids, I was thinking of maybe using the name Timur. And then when I looked into the figure, I was like, it's a nice name and stuff. And I was almost about to be named that name.
Right.
And yeah, when I looked into him, I'm like, how is this name so common? No offense to any. What did I end up being named? Oh, I don't want to say on camera.
No, he said, well, he was named.
I was about to be named, and I thought because I was about to be named, I want to name my kid that because I like the name. But then when I look into Timur name and the way he treated Muslims, the way he treated like everything pretty much.
He was a Muslim, no? He claimed to be.
You know, the way he attacked Muslims in the Abbasid region, and it's not good.
He's Temur, right?
Temur, yeah.
But Temur was a Muslim, right? He invaded India.
He claimed to be. He was a self-professed.
He claimed to be, but I mean, like, I don't want to make the clear, but I'm saying like some of his actions were.
Let me tell you what I've heard. I don't want to. I'm not going to cite a source, but this is what I've been led to believe.
Sure.
They did, and I've heard the similar claims made of Genghis Khan.
Yeah.
They took soil samples, so depending on the depth of the soil sample, you can gauge like the carbon dioxide content of the air in a given era.
Yeah.
So when they analyzed the carbon dioxide levels in the soil sample from Timur's era versus before Timur's era, they calculated. So you can estimate the population of the Earth based on the carbon dioxide output.
Yeah.
They calculated that the carbon dioxide output of humanity went down 11% during the time of Timur.
Yeah.
And the reports from Iran are that he killed 50% of the Iranian population.
Wow.
So 11% of the world's population, including 50% of Iran's population, while still recruiting the best minds of the Persian world to build his monuments, to build his mosques and so on in Samarkand.
he's a Muslim, right? He's building.
We could say that.
But he was
Well,
also
wait,
destroying mosques. So
Well,
yeah,
Which one?
and some of the mosques he built had Mithraic.
yeah. So I
symbols on.
mean, there's a lot of weird stuff going
Yeah,
on.
it was messy. But
messy,
Yeah,
it was-
that's I would say that is the most
It's not black and white.
Because no,
grievously
isn't he looked up to
bloody.
in like history. Of
Yeah, but
Indo-
he's looked up to in terms of like Khan, but that's not. I wouldn't associate. I think it's a bit unfair associating that with Islam. It's more like Turkish descendant. Like descendants of those people in that region. They looked up to him, and then over
I
culture.
would say that not just Muslims, but I would say we have to take the rough with the smooth. So where there are achievements to be proud of,
Yeah.
that whoever it might be, let's say take Muslims as an example, where there are achievements to be proud of, like
Yeah.
let's say the Islamic Golden Age.
Sure.
What
But
are
no,
ostensibly achievements by the
Yeah.
Persian intellectual
But-
world are claimed as Islamic achievements.
I never made that claim.
No,
Yeah.
not you. But so where atrocities are committed, sometimes I think we just have to accept that this is an expression of humanity, not necessarily an expression of religion, but it's sometimes the religion is being used as a
And I thought, sorry, Sam, just sorry, because
No,
you
no
brought
worries.
this up, right? So I thought, like, you consider Christians to be Catholic, right?
Do you mind if I step in because I didn't want to be on camera.
I can step
I
out.
just,
if you want.
I,
It's okay.
no, I just want to make this point. I just want to make this point because you're being inconsistent as a Christian. Because do you consider Catholics Christian?
Sorry?
Do you consider Catholics Christian?
No, we're talking about Tourmaline, bro. Where are you
No,
going?
because this all relates. This all relates. Do you consider
no.
Catholics Christian?
Because
No,
I just-
wait.
Let's talk about Timur.
Because I'm going to show you can't talk about this according to your own tradition.
Why?
Because if you consider Roman Catholics Christian, right? Roman Catholics abide by Vatican II, right? And in Vatican II, in the Second Vatican Council, it states Muslims worship the same God as Roman Catholics. We can't talk about previous historical issues we've had, and we should work together on unity and making the world a better
Yeah,
place.
and ask him
So,
what year was this?
are you
proclaimed?
abiding by
Ask him.
Vatican II right now?
What year is that?
Sorry,
What year was that? proclaimed?
in 1960s sometime.
60s, 62, I think. Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
So before that,
yeah.
were they following the same thing? What you just said? Were they saying that the Muslims, because the Muslims and the Catholics have a long history, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So did they ever believe that they both believed in the same God?
Up until that point, you mean?
Up until that point, I'm sure some Roman Catholics did, and that's the reason why Vatican II was influenced
okay,
by them.
All right, because you're talking about historical document,
Yeah.
so let's go back to history
Sure.
and find out if the Catholics and the Muslims ever had this understanding that they believed in the same God.
Yeah, of course, at some periods of time they didn't. But I'm saying, to be a Roman Catholic in the modern day, you have to believe in papal infallibility, right? And if it is in the Second Vatican Council that you have to believe that
We're
Muslims
deviating
worship
from
the same
topic, but
God.
Since it's on, I want you to see
I don't
this.
appreciate
This is gonna
hijacking
be
this
interesting.
conversation.
battery's about.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
the battery's about to die. So let me say this now, because you're asking me if I'm not a genuine Christian, because if I don't believe that what the Catholics believe now, because of this new proclamation in 1962, I'm asking you to go back in history and show me that the Catholics always believed that, which you cannot prove. Now I can tell you something else.
I'm talking about
which I
Catholics
think,
today.
Since you've asked me this question, now
Yeah.
let me ask you something.
Sure.
Since the Catholics revere Mother Mary,
Yeah.
and so you as a Muslim are a Catholic then?
No, did I say that?
Well, no. Who's the holiest woman in Islam?
As I mentioned to you before, there's four revered
Who
women
is the
in
highest
Islam.
of the four?
I don't want to say definitively, but I believe Maryam. Yeah.
It's Maryam.
Yeah.
So your highest woman
Yeah.
is Maryam, and Catholics they revere Maryam.
Yeah.
Right. So why don't you say the Hail Mary then?
That doesn't even logically follow.
Because you're following their. Okay, listen.
a very weak
Here's the theory. Now let me clear this up.
Sure.
Islam is a heresy of Christianity. Okay, the earliest Islam was what's his name, Warqa bin Nawfal. He was a Christian heretic. So all
Not
the
necessarily,
heretical-
not
look,
necessarily.
So
Wait.
when you say this, On the flip coin, what
Did you
you're
know
admitting is
Ebionites-
that Islam is
Sorry,
a Christian heresy.
sorry.
Is that
I
what
just
you're
say,
admitting?
I don't mind you critiquing me, but when like a Christian who's trying to be ecumenical, and he's saying he's one with the Roman Catholics, right?
I didn't
and
go
then
that
he's
far.
saying,
He's putting words in
okay,
my
okay.
mouth.
Do you believe that you worship the same God as the Roman Catholics? Let me make it very simple. Do you believe you worship the same God as the Roman Catholics?
Do I believe that I worship the same God as the Roman Catholics?
Yeah.
If they believe Jesus
Yeah.
is God, then it's the same God. But if they believe that Jesus is not God,
Yeah.
then it's not the same God.
Okay, can I come in now? Can I come in now? Okay. The Pope and Vatican II says Roman Catholics worship the same God as the Muslims.
Okay.
Okay? Wait. Okay. So to be a Roman Catholic, you have to believe in papal infallibility. So to be a Roman Catholic, you have to follow what the Pope says. And the Pope is saying they worship the same God as the Muslims. So if you come and you say the Muslim God is a fake God, right? Astaghfirullah,
moon god.
then, okay, you're saying that. But the Catholics are saying they worship the same God as the Muslims. So you're making takfir on the Catholics.
Okay.
It's very simple.
Then I can answer that.
Yeah.
I've explained this several times before when it was asked to me. I said
Sure.
not all the Catholics follow this teaching.
But they're
of
bad
the Pope.
Catholics. They're not
the Pope
Catholics
is
then.
nothing, in my view, because I'm not a Catholic.
Yeah.
Is whatever the Pope says has nothing to do with Christianity. That's my.
It has
take.
everything to do with Roman Catholicism because the
Roman
Pope
Catholicism.
is...
Okay, listen to
yeah,
me.
yeah.
There are a lot of Roman Catholics that I know that don't follow the Pope. Okay, so
they're
there
not-
are
they're
Catholics
committing a
that don't
heresy
follow
according
the
to their
Pope.
church.
No. Listen to me. They think that this Pope is not a good Pope.
It's not even
because
this Pope.
He's
It's
promoting
Pope John Paul II.
It's okay. All the popes that are doing those things that are a heresy to even those Catholics, they don't follow those popes. Okay, there are imams that a lot of Muslims don't want to follow. Some imams, so he's just a head imam as far as Islam goes, and I don't have to follow what he's saying. So what you're saying, what I am saying, carries more weight because it's in your Quran that Mary is the highest woman, and Roman Catholicism
we
is
don't
based
worship her.
on Mary. So you have more in common with Catholicism than I do, from your own scripture.
I'm going to, right here,
Thank
I'm
you.
going to put, to be continued.
To be continued. Thank you, Ty. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
But I'm just saying you're being inconsistent if you attack us.
I
But,
hear what you're
okay,
saying, but
sure.
you are being inconsistent.
I've got all the
because your
microphones
faith
now.
is hinged on Mary, and you should know that. And that
We
you have more in
appreciate-
common
we
with
love
Catholics than I do.
We don't